All right. Are we ready? That sounds all right. That's good enough.
It's reasonable, yeah.
Hey? Yeah, it's reasonable. I'll have to do this.
Yeah, speak into the beer. Yeah.
Speak into the beer. I can't get it too close, so I'm not going to have it. All righty. What we're going to do, we're going to do a very quick resin casting demonstration. We've got about half an hour, so I'm going to do an abbreviated version here. First thing I'll go through very quickly is our tools. We've got I use Easy Cast resin from Barnes Products. This is the 1 kilo bucket, bottles, so it's 500 grams in each. You can buy that from Barnes. I think it's about, where is it? Oh, it's about $40, $50. I've got some flyers here later if anybody wants to grab them. It's got all the tools that I use and the prices for all the different resins and rubbers that we use. So you want to grab one of those, that'd be good. The moulding rubber I use from Barnes is called Tinsel Gel 10. That'll be on the thing there. Now, the other things I need, to make the rubber, you've got to make your mold. So you've got to make your rubber mold first before you can do the casting. So I use cardboard. I've got plastic sheet. I use plastic sheet because the rubber won't stick to it. So you've all got plastic card at home probably from your modelling, evergreen plastic card. It's handy. If you haven't, just use cardboard. Paper cups to do the mixing, as we have here. Syringes. Each of 10 ml syringes. They're about, I buy them 100 at a time. They're much cheaper that way. These are about $1 each if anybody wants to buy some. I've got a few in here. The syringes I use to measure the resin from each bottle. I've got a little, this is a little darning needle in a little metal, in a little wooden stick, I suppose. I use that to get into the, just to get rid of any air bubbles inside molds. The most important thing, I don't know, who's done resin casting? A few people, all right, okay. Who aspires to want to do resin casting if you knew? Yeah. This is a pair of reverse, can we see that?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll go that way. Reverse tweezers, so when you squeeze it, they come apart. All right, you can buy these at any chemist. The idea there is if you've got something like this, these are little rifles. So if you want to get the resin in there, well, you can't. There's only tiny little air holes there. So what we do is we put it in there, and probably not going to be able to see this, but understand the theory. It pushes the mold open. So it pushes the mold open so you can pour the resin in. All right, very handy. Best thing I've got. This is the biggest set of rubber tires. Again, same thing there. You just push it in, and it just opens it enough so I can get the resin in when I pour it in. So very important you have one of these. These are great. I just got some small pliers. That's good for pulling things out later. Normal tweezers like this. Just the normal ones like that. And this is also a very important tool, and you can buy this. It's covered in resin at the moment. It's a dental tool. It's called a ball burnishing tool. If you go online, you'll be able to find these. Or who's the guy at the hobby shows who sells the tools? Is it Berthet Tools? Yeah, he sells this thing. Or I got this for $2. Some places they sell them online for $2. I've got about 20 or 30 of these in different shapes. But that's good because it's round, so it doesn't damage your mold. And you pour your resin in, and if you want to make sure there's no air bubbles, you get in there and just run it around the edges and the corners, especially if you're doing a face. When I cast heads, I just drop it in there and push it into the nose and make sure the air bubble comes out. And the one thing that I should have brought, I forgot to bring, was my little lid. I have a little bucket on a string, and I'll come to that later. So that's for getting the air bubbles out. So now to make the mold, I just bought, you see that? Yeah, that's 10 wooden boxes, wooden crates there. So I've already glued them. They're permanently glued onto that piece of plastic card. So that way I don't get any air bubbles or any traps underneath. So then what I do to make a new, that's actually a mold for that particular item there. That's what it'll look like in the end. So what we're going to do, you got a bit of cardboard. I usually measure it, probably double, this one double the height, so about 3.5 centimeters high. Because none of you are going to have a degasser. This is the biggest problem when you do resin casting is air bubbles in the rubber molds. I'll explain why later. But I use centrifuge for the resin casting, for the resin, to push it into the molds as well. But so I've made up a little, this is the dam. So we've made up a cardboard box. I've measured it up. It's 7.5 by, I think it's 4.5. Yeah. So 7.5 by 4.5. You see there. Like that. So then I just use a little bit of masking tape, which I cut too short. Get that on there. Now I've got a little square box, and that should just test fit. It fits exactly over it. Then we just use some woodworking, wood glue, and I just run it around the outside edge. Look, Danny. Like this. And we drop that on top. Just make sure it's even around the edges. I've got another tool at home, but I'll just use this and just make sure there's no air gaps, or I just go around the edge like this. This is very rough. And sometimes I'll put something on top of it just to make sure it sticks down. So you just leave that dry, and then you've got your mold ready to go. Right, so now we've got to mix up the rubber. I didn't bring any rubber because it takes 48 hours to dry. So if you all want to sit here and wait, that's fine, but... No, we're good. Oh, we're good? We're good? Okay. So anyway, so we've got your... I'll use this one. This one's dry. This is another it's four truck tires I use for my MY1 free mine exploders. So it's ready to go. So now you mix up your rubber. I use the Tinsel Gel 10, which is there's different grades of rubber. Tinsel Gel 10 is a 10A hardness. 10A hardness means it's very soft and very flexible, like this one here. You can, it's very, very flexible. This one is, don't make it anymore, but it's like a short A hardness. It's a lot harder. So depending on what you're casting, you may want to use a softer rubber. When I'm doing something that's got undercuts, something like a head, it's got a small opening, and then you've got a chin problem, and you need the rubber to be flexible so you can pull it out easily. If it's really hard rubber like this, it's just going to tear the mold apart after about 3 or 4 goes. But the 10A Shore hardness rubber is really soft, and everything pops out of them straight away. So you can go up to Shore 40, 50, 60, whatever you want, even up to 100, but 100's too hard. You don't want to use that. If you're trying to make something like a cobblestone road, you can use really hard rubber mold, because it's a one-sided mold, it just peels, the thing just comes straight out, so that's not a problem. But the more complicated, like if you're doing a little gun or something like that, or something intricate, the softer the rubber, the better. It's called 10A hardness, and there's a few. You'll see on the sheet if you want to grab one later which ones are the best ones to buy. So anyway, so you mix up your rubber. Let's imagine I got my rubber mixed up in here. Usually it's 10-to-1 for most of these companies. They use 9 parts or 10 parts rubber, 1 part hardener, and you mix it up. You've got forever like I said, it takes 48 hours to dry, so you've got plenty of time to work. Now, I have the luxury of having a degasser, so I just pour it straight into the mold till it gets just above the top of the wheels. Throw it in my degasser, and it sucks it out to about 100 pressure, 100 psi. So it boils. It basically boils, and all the air bubbles come out. But if you want to buy a degasser, it's going to cost you $1,000. So unless you plan to do a lot of molds, well, forget it. But you can get around that up to a point. The problem is if you don't degass a rubber mold, what happens is there's little air bubbles everywhere in the rubber, and sometimes they stick to the surface. So then when you go to pour the resin into the mold, because there's an air bubble at the surface of your rubber mold, so imagine there's an air bubble just there on the side, what will happen is as the resin heats up, resin heats up when you pour it. It's an exothermic reaction, and it will push that air bubble, and you'll have a little dint, like a little nipple, little bulge sticking out of your model. It'll be like something like that. It looks really weird. So anyway, you want to try and avoid that. So what you can do is you get an old brush, usually a short or a stiff, very stiff brush. You don't even cut it off halfway, so it's a bit stiffer. Put it in your rubber, and then just make sure you get all the little nooks and crannies, or you can even half fill it, and then just make sure you get it in all the spots, everywhere. And again, you can use your little burnishing tool here to make sure it gets into all those little spots. Then you pour the rest in and just hope that it works. Usually it does. It's pretty good. So again, the softer rubber will be better because it is thinner, and the air bubbles will tend to come up to the surface anyway. And another thing you can do is you can just do this for a while. That will break the surface tension. What you can do, we'll do this later with the resin casting, you put a bit of talcum powder in there and just switch that up. Got it. There's too much stuff here. Yeah, just make sure there's talcum powder on everything, and then get most of it out. Because the talcum powder breaks the surface tension. So anything liquid, when it hits it, will run through it. All right? And it should cover up all your air bubbles. So that's my mold. Okay, one last thing. How am I going for time? Michael, what's the time? 15? Okay, cool. All right. So you may have a part that's very complicated, and you only have a very small opening, casting lug. So what you can do, I won't do it to this, but you can cut a seam, cut through there on one side of the wheel, and have a gap. So when you go to open, it's easy to get the product out of the mold. And to keep it together while you're casting, you can put a rubber band around it like that, just to hold it together. Sometimes what I do too is I'll put a metal pin straight through the whole thing. This is a bit wide for a metal pin, but I can put a metal pin though, so it always lines up where the cut is. There are other ways. You can do a two-part rubber mold, where you have little guide pins, but that's time-consuming and quite complicated. So anyway, now the actual casting. So let's say that's my 10 little boxes there. Here's my rubber mold. So first thing you do, again, talcum powder. I'll actually do a pour here. Usually just get it around. That one's pretty easy. Get most of it out. Around here. So I've got two-part. This is Easy Cast. Easy Cast dries in about 2 minutes. So what you have to do is not, hey? Well, yeah, exactly. I try casting at home in Goulburn, and it goes off. Who uses Easy Cast? It goes off before you can pour it somewhere. So you've got to be real quick. So I estimate that's going to be about that much. Oh, it doesn't matter. That should be enough to do the whole lot. So I get the even amount. Put them. What's wrong one? I'm usually standing up to do this. It feels funny. So I've got a little brush, so just stir that for about 20 goes. Now the most important thing, and I forgot to bring it, I've got a little plastic 1 litre bucket and it's got a metal handle and a string, a tennis string on it. And I'll show you. I'll stand up and show you what I do in a minute. So I'm just going to pour. I've only done enough for about 6 or 7 here. This will go off in a minute or two. So I'll just do those 6. So now I'll use my little needle. This is a darning needle, so it's not. It's very blunt. It's not, as long as you're not too vicious, it won't damage your rubber. You just run it into the corners of the box like that, just to make sure that a few air bubbles have come to the surface. Now what I do is I'm going to tap it on the table to vibrate it. Just like this. And well, you can even do that. A lot of air bubbles will come up to the surface when you do that. Then the next thing I do, and I can't believe I didn't bring it. I'll bring it next month and I'll show you how to do it. but I've got a little bucket about this big, and am I still on the camera? A little bucket about this big, and it's got a metal handle. I've got a tennis string on it. This tennis string won't break up to about 150 kilos of pressure. So, and then what I do is I put this in the metal, I put this in the plastic bucket, which is about that big, and then I just spin it really, really hard. But the tennis string's about that long, so it misses the floor by that much and the ceiling. So you just spin it really hard for about 20 or 30 goes, all the air bubbles come out. You have no air bubbles, no problem at all. And that's the best way to do it. So it's never broken. Don't use anything other than tennis. I was going to bring some tennis string, but I'll bring some next month if anybody wants some. Because I was a tennis coach, I got piles of tennis rackets and string at home. Normal string eventually will snap, and then you'll put a hole in your ceiling or the floor or somewhere. It depends where it breaks, you know. But I periodically check mine. It's not even close to being damaged. It's still fine. So that'll dry in a minute. It's a bit cool in here, so it might take a bit longer. Yeah, tap on the mold. Now, if you're doing little things like this is like little guns. Easy cast isn't very hard, until it cures properly. But what you can do is put it under a heat lamp. Once it's dried, give it about 20 minutes, half an hour to dry. Once it's dried, you put it under a heat lamp, like you've got in your bathroom, or put it on the windowsill in the hottest place in your house you can find, somewhere in the sun, up against the glass. It will make it 3 or 4 times harder very quickly. The ideal temperature is 72 degrees Celsius for easy cast. Heat lamp, you don't want to get it too close. It'll cook it. It'll go up over 100 degrees Celsius. Don't put it in an oven. That's just suicide. It'll melt everything. That's starting to go now. You can't see it though. I can't tip it yet. But what else? I'm pretty much there. Any quick questions? Anybody? While I think.
I'm guessing all your stuff you use like single use. So once you syringe it, you throw it out, or you.
Oh, I'll keep using the syringes as long as they last. Like this one. This is the catalyst, so it does tend to dry the syringe out. But this is the other one. It doesn't. This one lasts for ages. So, but this will last for ages. So, but sometimes the plastic cups I throw out after.